Welcome back, you beautiful people. Welcome to the Tflip Show, episode 4. I am so happy for you guys to be here. Thank you guys so much for watching. Listen, we got a great conversation today. We have a special guest, Frank Lombardo. As you're going to see, the guy's a fantastic talker. He has seen a lot of life, and it's a great conversation. I don't want to spoil anything. I want you guys to experience firsthand. So let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Tell me what you thought about his experiences, and maybe if you got some suggestions of topics you want Shane and I to go over next episode, let me know. Leave it down in the comments below. And all you listeners on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, hey, thank you so much for listening. And guys, as always, if you want to, skip the wait of waiting to see or hear this on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, you can catch us live every single Wednesday on Tflip 16 on Twitch, 6 p.m. PST every Wednesday. That's where you can find us live interview, unfiltered, uncut. Same great content nonetheless. So with all that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. I cannot appreciate you guys and thank you guys enough. And hey, this is the start of something new, right? As always, be a friend, tell a friend. Take care. What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to episode 4 of the Tflip Show. Frank Lombardo, welcome. How are we doing?
Good.
Good. I'm
very good.
Very happy to have you. Joined by, as usual, our co-host, Shane. How are we doing, Shane, down there?
I'm doing fantastic.
Beautiful hump day, huh?
Oh, perfect.
Gorgeous day. The weather out there is just really shaping up, I'd say.
Yeah.
Really starting to feel like summertime out there.
Slightly on the warm side, but not too warm,
Yeah. No, it's ideal. The pollen's a little high, It's got allergies, It scares you. Is it COVID? Is it allergies? We don't know.
We're sniffling a little bit, but I'd say it's very temperate out there, boys.
Yeah, I would say so. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are joined by the Frank Lombardo. Not only is he a man of many wonders, many talents, many experiences, but he's also my girlfriend's grandfather. So he's like family to me. So I'm very excited to have you join us, Frank.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Absolutely, yeah. It's I'd have to say you're probably one of our first individuals with as much life experience as you have on this show, and I'm excited. I'm excited to have someone with as much wisdom as you have here on the show.
Looking forward to hearing
with the time you've been on Earth.
Yeah.
Sure.
Sure. I think you do. And plus, I got my tomatoes in today, so everything's good.
Your tomatoes.
Tomatoes are in.
You got the tomatoes. Tyler got his eggs.
Yeah.
I got my fresh eggs. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So Frank, I already touched on it right out of the gate. You're a man of many experiences, many talents. The first thing that comes to mind that I know from you is that you're a firefighter for Santa Clara County, correct?
I was.
For how many years was that?
30.
30 years.
30 years.
That's
30
incredible.
Years. Yeah.
So tell me, I know it's a little broad. I'm going to just throw you into it, but tell me a little bit about your experience. What was it like? What got you into firefighting? What led you to that path?
Well, to be honest, I was a machinist, and it was in my early 20s. I was a machinist. Then I met my bride. And I knew.
Off camera in the corner over here.
By the way, we do have a little bit of a live studio audience today.
We do. We have our first live studio audience. Yeah. But sorry, continue.
And I met my lovely bride-to-be, and I knew I can't do this for the rest of my life.
Sure.
If you've ever been in a machine shop, it's oily, greasy, dirty, dark. I'm sorry for all you machinists out there. But I knew I couldn't do that for the rest of my life. So I took the advice of my cousin, who was a San Jose firefighter. He said, come on, kid, take the test. So I did. I took the test for the county and the city of San Jose. And luckily I passed them both. And the county called me first, so I went to work for them. And
how old were you when that went down?
Good question. I was about 23.
Okay.
Then. And so I was already married for about a year. So I knew we thought, oh my God, I can't do this machinist thing for the rest of my life. So that was that.
So since you already touched on it, I might as well bring it up. I was going to save it, let us get there to it. But you brought up, so you're already married for a year.
Yeah.
How old?
22. 22, almost 23.
Exactly. So you got married for what in our generation more often than not is
pretty young.
Very young,
yeah.
For most. I know for Shane and I, kind of the norm is maybe, 24, 25.
Yeah. But let me just say something. What do you do when you meet the right woman?
Lock her down.
Yeah. Exactly. Lock her down. You have to. Otherwise somebody else will, right? Okay, Shane.
Yeah. Hey, I'm taking notes.
So you already brought up your marriage. You're married at, it was 22.
Yeah.
Then you got married at 22, right. And you really just you we're certain on it, you know. So tell me about like what gets you there to that point, because you're married to the same woman. How many years later now? You've been married 53
Wow.
years. That's something
Impressive.
special, something incredibly special. And
It doesn't seem special because it's just day-to-day stuff. You know?
it
It just
comes
feels
natural.
right.
It comes
Just
natural.
I love that. I love
Perfect.
Right.
that. So here's my question then: is as a couple guys here sitting at the table,
Yeah.
how do you do it? What do we got to look for as guys and girls, and you know how to make a relationship like that last?
Wow, that's a really good question, and I'll answer it like this: you have to have a sense of humor,
Uh-huh.
and you have to be compatible in that way. You don't have to like the same things, but you have to complement each other. You know, if I don't like to clean the garage, she likes to clean the garage. I mean, you can't beat that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, come on. So those are the things. You know, if one person is good at one thing, you're good at something else, and you complement each other, and that's what makes the world go around, really.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. So I want to touch on that because I knew already that you and Janet have been married as long as you have, and as happy as you guys are, you know.
Oh,
So I had to bring that up, and I'm sure Shane might want to dive into something on that later, but I
Yeah.
think we'll get to it because I want to get back to the firefighting because
that
you
off.
brought
Sure,
up
sure.
you brought up you're married, so firefighting. So you're a machinist prior to be a firefighter.
I was.
So maybe I might have missed it. So what made it certain in your head though? Like how do you go from machinist to firefighter? It's just like it was a click where it's like that sounds like something I want to do for the next 30 years.
No, I didn't. To be honest, I didn't like being a machinist.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew because I would visit my cousin at the firehouse periodically, and they looked like they were having a good time.
Yeah.
And that's what you want in if you're going to do something as a career.
You gotta
Wouldn't
enjoy
it
it.
be nice?
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be nice to enjoy it? It
Yeah.
would be nice to enjoy it, and I did. For 30 years, I couldn't think of anything that I would have done that would have been more enjoyable.
That's
And
awesome.
I'm not
That's
kidding.
perfect.
I'm not kidding about that. That's true.
Yeah. So and then I know Shane, we brought it up in the debriefing of this show, some questions regarding that in the firefighting, and I don't know if you want to ask him regarding that before we go further on it.
Well, there was one question I had in particular, seeing as you're such a stud at the age you are now, and you know, firefighters kind of have that reputation of being, you know, it's what the ladies like. You know what I mean?
Oh.
They like that, and you know, my dad was a firefighter for a handful of years, and you know, he had some funny stories of that. You know, walking into a bar with your shirt on or whatever. You know, and I actually went to school to be a firefighter for 1 year. Didn't, you know, it wasn't my thing. I didn't end up following through with it. But you know, the 1 year I was there, I would wear my mission fire sweatshirt. You know, and it always seemed to attract the ladies. And so coming into this as a married man, you know, 22, stud, right? How are you able to just, you know, fight off all the ladies?
To be honest, I was 150 pounds. I just made the cut, by the way. You had to be
Okay.
150
Yeah.
pounds. And I was not a stud back then, and I'm not a stud now. But my wife can attest to this. I was just a skinny kid. I was lucky I got on. I'm not saying, I mean, the desire was there. So I really wanted it because I knew I was going to be married for a long time because she's the right one. So if you're going to be married for a long time and you're going to want to bring and I didn't want her to work. Now that's my bad probably. I kind of kept her out of the job market. She might have wanted to do something, but I thought,
You wanted to take care of her.
well, I wanted to take care of her, but I wanted her to raise our children rather than not be there. I wasn't there. Now, when I first got on, and it still is today, you've got to be there at the firehouse 24 hours around the clock. So somebody's got to be home. Somebody's got to be home to make sure everything's going.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what was your schedule? Was it 3 days on, 4 days off, or?
Well, it was 3 days. Like, just take, for instance, if you went to work on a Monday, you worked 24 hours around the clock. You get off at Tuesday morning at 8 o'clock. Be back at Wednesday morning at 8 o'clock.
Gotcha.
Around the clock. Be back at Friday. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then 4 days off in a row. And then the next 3 days and 4 days
Yeah.
off.
So where exactly were you stationed?
For the most of my career, I started at Tully Road in San Jose, next to the fairgrounds.
Yeah.
It was a fun place to start. I I met a lot of great guys there, and for most of my career, I was stationed at Shannon in Los Gatos, on Shannon Road. I worked downtown Los Gatos on University Avenue for a while. I worked all the stations in our. By the way, I worked for Santa Clara County Fire, as opposed to San Jose or one of the other cities. Right, Cal Fire. Santa Clara County Fire is unique in that it is a county fire department, but we contract to.
Police officers too, right?
No, we don't have police officers. That's the sheriff's department.
Okay.
But we protect Los Gatos, Campbell, Saratoga, Los Altos. Did I say Los Gatos? Campbell, Saratoga, Los Altos. I can't think of the rest. But there are 200
chunk of the Bay Area.
Roughly 250,000 people in our jurisdiction.
Gotcha.
And we have, as it stands now, around 300 suppression and their support people, suppression, support, and fire prevention. There are about 300 total. And so it's a fairly big department because Santa Clara County is the biggest county in Northern California.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was a great career. I really, I wish I could tell you a lot of stories, but it's hard to remember them all.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I can only imagine 30 years. It's hard to, collect
Put it all in
everything.
an hour podcast.
Holy cow. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So if you had to choose one of the many, I know this is one of Shane's questions. I might yank it from you. Is what out of all the experiences you had, things you saw, and things you did, what would you say is the most bizarre? Whether it's funny, scary, or
like
if you had
your most memorable call that you went on.
That's a tough. Now that's really tough.
Sure. I can
Memorable in that you see death and destruction in 30 years. You can't help it but see that. But there are some unique aspects to the job, and I'll tell you one that stuck with me for a long time, and it's kind of silly. We get a call of a smoke detector alarm
Sure.
going off from somebody across the street from a house that he could hear the smoke detector, so he called the fire department. Now, we didn't go code 3 is red lights and sirens, so we didn't even go code 3.
Yeah.
We went code 2, which is just like you're normally driving there. So we get there, we pull up, and we can hear the smoke detector going off in the house. So we get out of the engine, and we walk up to the front door, knock on the front door, and look in, and to our left, down the hallway, there's an old man, probably my age, but he's an old guy on a ladder, and his wife's there holding him up, and he's trying to take the smoke detector on the ceiling.
The batteries.
The batteries are going. So I open the screen door, and they said, "Oh, hi." I look to my right, and the kitchen is fully involved.
Oh, geez.
Honestly. The guy had gone into the kitchen, thought he was turning off the stove, turned on the stove, and it just turned on all 4 burners, and they melted. The light that was above fell on the burners and was just blazing.
So they were more worried about the smoke detector
They
than
didn't
the
even
fire?
know the house was on fire.
Oh, they didn't even know it was
they
on
didn't
fire.
even know the house was on fire.
They were just
So
so
if
focused
the guy
on
across
that.
the street hadn't called,
They would have been caught in there more than likely.
well, you don't know.
Yeah, you never
but
know,
It was, we talked about that for a while. But that's one of many, and I wish, I should have known that would have been a question you were going to ask me. And I didn't think about that today, but there were a lot of things that happened.
What about maybe like a prank? I know my dad, when he was a firefighter, he's got all kinds of prank stories that he did or that were done to him. You have a memorable prank that you did or that you were pranked on?
You think? Yeah.
You
when
think?
I first got on, that was hazing was the thing.
Yeah, you got to haze the rookie.
Hazing was the thing.
green one.
So there's a couple stories I can't tell, but one story I can tell was when a new guy used to come on, they'd show him how to clean the toilets and take him in the bathroom and show him how to clean the toilets. But I remember one guy, he came in and we were showing him how to clean the toilets. And So he said, well, you got to wait because there's somebody going to the bathroom in here. But as soon as he's done, we'll go in. So what happened was they took a pair of turnout boots, stuck them in the bathroom, in the stall, so you could see the turnout boots, brought a hose in through the window, turned it on at a trickle so you could hear the guy peeing.
So it sounds like he's peeing.
Right. He must have been peeing for a half an hour straight while this guy was outside waiting for him
to come out.
Yeah. Now, I don't know what the guy was thinking, but that's one of the things, and many, many things. To myself, when I first got on, I remember going to the fire. These guys were crazy guys. I mean, they when the alarm went off, it was all business. But
between
the alarms.
Between the alarms. I noticed in the morning, one of the guys had in the dorm, he had shaving equipment all over his bed, with a towel and shaving equipment. I didn't know what the heck it was for, so I didn't say anything. Finally, halfway through the day, they were talking during lunch, like, yeah, when that happened to me, I wanted to quit. What are they talking about? So finally comes time to, after dinner, they wanted me to go in the dorm, and I'm thinking, shaving equipment, dorm, they're going to shave me.
Yeah.
And I thought, no, this isn't going to happen. So I started running around. Then they chased me. And I'm thinking, well, I can either give up and let them do what they're going to do, or I lock myself in the bathroom. And I did. I locked myself in the bathroom. Well, the captain had the keys for every room.
Yeah.
So they grabbed the key, and they came in there, and they drugged me into the dorm. And they actually didn't shave me because they had pity on me. But they were going to, and I didn't know what they were going to shave. I didn't ask.
So
I didn't want to
rather
find
not
out.
know.
No.
So talking about the pranks, Shane's dad, actually, Chris, he was formerly a firefighter, like Shane said.
Where?
He was Cal Fire. He was stationed, a couple places, but he was mostly stationed up in Santa Cruz Mountains.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So, and why I bring him up, he says in the chat, you're talking about pranks and firefighters. And one of the things he says this might be foreign to me, but you two at least should know. It says, we gave an FNG firefighter a small file and told him to sharpen the bulldozer blade. I can assume what that means, so it sounds like a...
Yeah, they just gave the new guy the blade.
Sure.
So is that normal, I guess, in the firefighter house? Like, it's you guys just prank each other?
Well, to be honest, really, we do, in the fire service, you do see a lot of horrible things. And there are, I mean,
I can only imagine.
Yeah, you can imagine. And so during the rest of the time, it's good to have a sense of humor and to keep things light.
Sure.
Because if you don't, the little old lady that was hit by a car, and
you got to counter the
you really do. You really do.
Heavy.
And I remember coming back from just that call, and my engineer actually got sick. He was sick. After you see something like that, a person that's just laying in the street, broken and dead.
Yeah.
And so you kind of, you have to get over that. You mourn that, and then you make things lighter. But
right.
Yeah, that's one of the things. We also had the firefighters rodeo. You probably are not familiar with that.
I'm not in the slightest. I would love to hear about that.
And see, I was hoping you would ask me.
I would.
The belt buckle.
About my belt buckle that I
The
wore.
belt buckle.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hang on,
You might be able, if you can stand up.
I don't know.
and show
Can you
the
stand
camera.
up, maybe?
Well, I don't know if I can, but
You might. There you go. Yeah,
There you
you
go.
can see it. Low to your right. Go low to.
You
Sorry,
gotta move the
this way.
glass.
There you go. Yep. I think you can see it.
Firefighter bell buckle.
So, and it says firefighter. So, what does that say on the top?
1983.
Firefighters rodeo. And then 1983. All right. And then it says and director Frank Lombardo. Even got your
Wow.
name. That is legit. I
This
did not.
guy.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
when you walked in, I noticed the belt buckle, but I didn't look close enough at it. I just you look good head to toe. Had the boots, had the slacks, got
You
the.
can't even
Yeah,
dress
we-
impressive.
we-
I know. Shane and I are a little underdressed. I feel a little
Wearing
bad.
dirty work jeans and a brown t-shirt.
No. The reason I wore it is because I thought maybe it would give me something to talk about, because there was a firefighters rodeo back in the day. San Jose and county. They used to call us the County Cowboys because we started the rodeo, and San Jose would help us sell tickets and so forth. And we had, and then the rest of the cities in the county joined in, and it was quite an event. It's kind of too bad. It was a lot of fun. We'd have a dance afterwards, and it was just a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Sounds like
And
a good
even
time.
some firefighters even got to ride bulls, and I was asked, but I refused. But some of my friends,
They did it. They hopped on, or
yes, Bob Ramirez, good friend of mine, Wally Adams, another good friend. Bob Ramirez told me one time he had 3 sons, but he says, my first 2 sons I wanted to name. He's a Hispanic guy, good guy. So I wanted to name my sons Jose and Joseby. And he didn't. His wife wouldn't let him.
I like that. That's funny.
Bob was a good guy.
Yeah.
He was a great guy.
So
he still is, by the way.
It still is. Good.
Still is.
Well, I'm glad to hear he still is.
hanging
Yeah,
around.
he still is.
So I actually want to go back a little bit. Tell me a little bit more about the road. Like, how'd that go about? So you got your department put it together, right? And so what would happen? Tell me, you show up to the rodeo. I want to hear more
You
about
guys
it.
barrel
Well, we-
racing,
put-
wrestling, steer. What's
Yeah,
going
put
on
me in
there?
there. Put me in the rodeo.
Put you in the rodeo?
Yeah, like I want to be there
I'm
mentally.
first row right now.
Yeah, it was.
Coors Light in my hand.
It was one of those things. We get a stock contractor who had stock. He had bucking horses and bulls and calves, roping calves and so forth. We had a good friend. Those of you who are watching that know San Jose, used to be Roddy. Jack Roddy owned a bar up on Alum Rock Avenue called Boots and Saddles, and he was a world-class bulldogger, world champion.
Okay.
He won, and he would come to the rodeo, and we would just. It was a lot of fun. It was an actual. I mean, this was not just firefighters. This was an actual pro rodeo with all the PRCA stars and so forth.
That's cool.
Yeah, clowns, and it was the whole bit. It was
a
fun.
whole 9 yards.
It
It sounds
was.
like.
It was. It
Yeah.
was
Bull
fun.
riding, man,
It was way fun.
That's
It was
definitely
fun.
on my bucket list. I want to hop on a bull.
I think I want to try sometime.
I got a couple buddies that are rodeo
that's-
guys. So
that's crazy.
I
I think it's a one-time thing.
I can make some phone calls.
Yeah.
We can make it happen.
Great.
It seems, I don't know, it seems kind of exciting. Like, cause don't they
Yeah.
have protective vests that could go on too?
Yeah,
Kinda-
I mean, you get
They
cursed on
didn't
by
back
a bull.
then.
and-
Yeah.
Believe me, they did not back then.
Not back
they didn't
then,
wear
huh?
helmets. They didn't wear protective
There's
vests.
a cowboy hat
Honestly.
and jump on.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I wanted to kind of, we talked about that you've seen a lot of life, and Shane and I are both 20, are you 21, 22?
I'm 21. Yeah.
21, okay.
Drinking
21
water,
years
yeah.
young, I'm 22 years young, and it's not often that that someone like yourself has seen as much life as you have, and the experiences that you've seen. So through the decades, I'm kind of curious as to, let me backtrack. We lived through a lot of trends, right? I know I could say that at 22 years old, that there's a lot of
just from
trends.
what we've seen in the 21 years or whatever.
Exactly.
Things change.
So, and you mentioned in a previous conversation, I would say maybe a week ago or so, you talked about how, as far as like cuss words. Now, I could pick a cuss word that if you say it, like you're fixing to fight someone, like it's going to start a fight. And you said that, one of probably the worst cuss words you could say in your day is MFer. Calling someone an FFer. Hey, you're an MFer. And it'd start a fight. That's like the deepest insult you could get. So what I'm asking you is like, as far as trends when you're young, like I'm thinking about whether it's, what you're saying, how you're dressing, stuff like that. What did you live through at our age, I would say, as far as trends go?
Wow. As far as trends go, now don't forget, I've lived 3.5 lifetimes. You're 22.
Uh-huh.
I'm 76.
Yeah.
Add it up.
Yeah.
3.5 lifetimes. So I've forgotten what you're asking me about a trend back when I was in my 20s.
Right. Yeah.
Wow.
So, like, I could think of what I was so excited you showed me this. I didn't even know you had it. I recall a video you showed me, well, not even video, it was film that you had transferred onto your computer of you and your buddies in I think it was a Corvette, wasn't it?
We had Corvettes.
You guys cruising around the streets. I remember
Right,
the streets
right.
and isn't San Jose, wasn't it?
Yes.
The streets were incredibly wide. I just remember like collecting a few things from it, being as young as I am and thinking about, that's my home, my city, where I live, and
Yeah,
seeing how
so
it's
different.
different. Yeah, it's
Everything
really
was a winery. Like my elementary school I went to was a winery back, in 40, 50 years ago or whatever.
Right. Yeah. So like I'm thinking about things like that, that cool film that you had you and your buddies cruising around in your muscle cars and what you guys were wearing, I'm thinking about like that. So I think we actually mentioned in the pre-show is I think Emmy's brother said is that the short shorts, guys are starting to wear shorter and shorter shorts.
Unbelievable, yeah.
So like what's something like let's say when you're 20ish years old, what's something that you'd put on like you'd be cool?
Here's the funny thing. Now you talk about trends. Things in the fire service as well as in the general public, things change and they go from here to here, back to here, back to there. Back to here again.
You mentioned that guys wearing short shorts now. I mean, there's pictures of my dad. That was like in his prime. Like
That's
high
exactly
school,
right.
college. Everyone was wearing the thigh high shorts
Right.
and the sleeveless tees.
If I'd have brought my high school yearbook, the basketball team had shorts that were
That high, yeah.
I know
They're
they're
high.
way short.
all the clips of Larry Bird,
Yeah.
the shorts are halfway up his legs.
They look like the same length
Yeah.
shorts girls wear in high school,
A lot of
It's
a lot of my
really-
dad's younger pictures, he's got those shorts on.
Right.
And then the longer shorts came into being, and they looked funny for a while. Then all of a sudden,
That was the
you
norm.
can't normal, and now when they go back to short again, they're going to look funny for a
Right.
while,
Right.
until everybody starts wearing
So
them.
kind of on this topic, it's a little bit of a different question. So you say you're 70. How old?
76. I
Okay.
just turned 76.
All right. So you've
Yeah,
lived,
it was just his birthday,
you've
by the
lived
way.
through a handful of decades. If you had to pick, what was your favorite decade?
My favorite decade,
Yeah.
I would say, probably the 70s
And why?
70s? Yeah. Why?
because of the kids. We had our daughters in 1970 and 1972. Going through that period of our lives, my wife and I were young. The kids were just getting started. It was fun raising two little kids. To me, that was the most fun. Honestly, I miss those days. Hopefully, I'll have great grandchildren. My grandchildren came along. And so you get to relive that.
Yeah.
And then now great grandchildren, we get to relive it again. Hopefully, and are you listening?
I'm listening to every word of it. I'm listening to every word of it.
Okay.
Tyler's got to get that firefighter job first.
Yeah, that's something different right there.
Excellent.
I have a lot of respect for the firefighters because that's a different type
Yeah.
of
And
job.
I'll tell you,
but-
talking about things changing in the fire service, everything is different now. Everything.
In
There's
what way?
One
Yeah, in what
thing.
Everywhere.
Resuscitators, totally different. Totally different. The mechanics are different, and so forth. You just take a ladder. The fly. I don't know if you're familiar with with the way you put up a ladder. There's a fly. There's a base and a fly.
okay.
When you pull up the fly, it goes up.
Goes up.
Well, they used to tell us fly in toward the building. Then, a few years later, I'd say a few years, maybe 10 years later, they wanted the fly out. They thought it was more sturdy that way. Then they rethought that 10 years later. No, fly in and fly out. So things
Back and
things
forth.
keep changing, and that's probably a silly example, but everything, the engines, we used to have run cards. Now everything's on computer.
Right.
You can't get lost.
Right.
And you just plug in the address, and it's going to.
Yeah.
That's actually, hang on. Since you bring that up, that's a great question I wouldn't have probably thought of is navigation nowadays.
Oh.
Everything I'm talking like, I'm guilty of it. I'm prideful of like thinking about, no, I don't need directions. I try to challenge myself in that way because I'm usually actually good with landmarks. That's kind of, I don't know streets as well, but I'll know landmarks. Landmarks will get me to where I need to be. But since you bring that up as a firefighter, you're going to a house that chances are you may not even know exactly where it is, and you get a call. You already slightly said it. So how would you get there? You get a call, you get an address. What's getting you guys there? You just know the streets, or?
Yes, we had run cards that we made, and the run card would have the street on one side and all the addresses on that street, and on the other side it had a map of the area and a little route that you might take. The trouble is, and we carried it bunch of run cards in the engine. So
Yeah.
if you weren't in the fire station, that wouldn't help you so much because you wouldn't know exactly
my dad
where you
said
were.
you just have to just pull out map books and
Right.
figure it out.
We had map books, and I will say most firefighters are good with directions. I don't know
Right.
why
I would
that
think.
is. I don't know why that is, but it's true. Now, on another note, I just want you to know that things have changed so much, and that you guys wouldn't even probably realize this, but I was in the fire department, in our fire department, when we hired the first black firefighter, and we hired the first woman firefighter.
In your department specifically, right?
In our department. San Jose was about the same time. They hired their first black firefighter, and I don't know exactly when they hired their first female firefighter, but I remember ours.
Right.
And it was you would think now, by now, we've come along. This was back in the 70s when we hired our first, the first woman, first black. You would think that we would have done it before. Our fire department had been around since 1947. San Jose had been around a lot longer than that.
Way before, right?
But still, they hired their first black and first woman
Right.
around the same time we did.
I think what's super interesting about that to touch on is first of all to address that is that's crazy even to imagine, because
It is.
at our age that's almost normal. Not even almost. It is normal. It's
I mean,
normal to
growing up in San Jose, we've kind of been introduced to the multicultural, right?
beyond diverse.
Elementary school, middle
Sure.
school, high school, like it's always been a diverse culture growing up. My best friend was an African American across the street, and I never didn't
Yeah.
even cross my mind.
Right.
It was just normal. Like that's.
Right.
But you flash back 50 years or whatever. That's crazy.
It is.
It's
crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy to imagine that because I'll say two things is that I got my first vaccine yesterday and standing in line at Levi Stadium I told Emmy it's like you always know it, but especially being in the Bay Area where we are easily probably the most diverse
Oh, for sure.
cities or areas in the United
100%.
States. It's bizarre. It's realizing it's just I was kind of looking around people watching. It's like it's just people of every demographic, race, gender, everything. It's beyond diverse. And then to even address talking about your job and the diversity at that time was new. It's crazy to hear that for him and I, because it's normal in our generation. I think even now we're living through history today where we had the first woman vice president elected in the office. Only a handful of years ago we had the first African American man voted in the office. Where I think fast forward maybe in the next, let's say 30 years, Shane and I's kids or grandkids further beyond that, that's gonna say that was a first. Then it's gonna be the same thing.
Right.
History will repeat itself in a way, and it's incredibly interesting that at your time it seemed so new and different.
It was.
Whereas to us,
And I'll tell you what didn't seem different, which now thinking back on it probably should have, but the first Asian firefighter. I didn't even think about that because when I was growing up in school, there were Asian kids all over the place.
Right.
And they weren't considered different at all.
Right.
Not at all. And yet, when I first got on, I can't remember an Asian firefighter. Now, I may be wrong, but I don't think there was. But after I got on, there were dozens.
Yeah,
Right.
there's a lot of them now.
Yeah.
right?
And so it's so silly because, we're a melting pot here. And whether you say women, blacks, Asians, white, Hispanic, whoever, we're all the same.
Yeah. At the end of the day, we are.
Same. They're
100%.
good. They're a good.
Every individual person has their own individual
That's
characteristics.
right. Absolutely.
Doesn't matter
Absolutely.
where they're from or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And so we talk about, going through the decades and what you lived through. And something that I think about is cool to touch on because my grandfather went to the Vietnam War. And now you lived through the Vietnam War, correct? You're what, 20-ish years old, my math's right? A little younger than 20?
Yeah, I was 19, and I'll tell you what happened there. My buddies and I went to college, junior college, for a year. And 4 of us decided this isn't for us. Mm-hmm. So we went to join the military. So we went to a Navy recruiter, a Marine recruiter, an Army recruiter. We ended up going to the National Guard recruiter. These guys were having more fun. I kid you not. They happened to be having a meeting the day we went. And one of the 4 guys was dating a girl who her father was a major or something in the National Guard. We went there, and the guy said, "Oh, you guys, we're going to send you. You're going to have a good time." Blah blah. So we ended up joining the National Guard. This was in December of '64 that we joined. We didn't get to go to basic training till April. So we joined in December. We went to meetings. In the meantime, between December of '64 and April of '65, they started drafting for Vietnam. It was Providence. I mean, we could have been, if we hadn't joined, we probably would have all been drafted.
Right.
Luckily, we were already in the National Guard, so they couldn't draft us. We didn't have to go to Vietnam because we were in the National Guard. We did go to Watts. You probably don't know anything about that. And we went to Berkeley for the riots in Berkeley, People's Park, and so forth. And we did go to that. But and we went to anything that I can't remember now specific things, but I was in for 6 years.
Right.
When you joined the National Guard, you were in for a tour of 6 years, and that meant 6 months of duty, and then you got out of that 6 months, and you went to meetings once a month for the next 5.5 years.
Right. So so let's talk actually a little bit more about the experience through the Vietnam War, right? So you joined the National Guard shortly before Vietnam started, right?
Just before.
And then before this conversation, we touched on, your generation at its time at 19, 20 years old. What was it like amongst you and your friends hearing that the Vietnam War was, happening? They're drafting, whereas in our day and age, there's no draft. There isn't a draft if we ever went to war. So what was that like for you and your friends and people you even just knew of?
Well, for myself, I even hate to say this, but for myself, when seeing all of these young guys being drafted and knowing I could have been one of them, just lucky that I wasn't, but I would have gone, just like all my friends, we would have gone, and I'm thinking, all these young guys are getting killed over there. Now, this is after a while, after a few years. All these young guys are getting killed over there. Why are we doing this? Now, I wasn't into politics then. I didn't even know why we were there. I knew we didn't want Vietnam to go communist.
Right.
And so we were going to prevent that. But to be honest, I thought, why don't we just go over, if we're fighting these people, we've got all the air, we can just annihilate them if we want. And yet we're sending young guys over to be killed for what reason? It just didn't seem proper. Didn't seem.
And through history, we all kind of, I know Shane and I growing up is that we didn't know why we were fighting it, more or less, in the early stages. So, and what you answered was just interesting because I can't imagine being at that age, put in the position where, hey, we're going to pull you into war, son. Like, you're coming in.
You don't have a choice.
You don't have a choice. You go to prison. My grandfather was one of those people who got drafted. Right. He got drafted in, I think my mom actually just said, in 66. He got drafted in 66, and I think if I remember, he served until 69, I think, something like that. Point is I can't imagine living through that, and I guess you were, quote, lucky enough to be in the National Guard at the time, and that's why you weren't drafted, right? Or was it just luck?
Now, don't forget, we went to these different recruiting stations,
right?
And they were enticing us to come in. The National Guard, they wanted us. Oh, you guys are going to love it here. This blah. A few months later, you couldn't get into that building because there were so many people trying to get into the National Guard. To join the National Guard. It was amazing. It really was.
Good timing.
Good. Well,
It's just stuff like that is, talking about the life that you've seen. I can't even begin to fathom that. And that's why I like to, because when I had the opportunity, I would love to ask my grandfather those type of questions, what he lived through, and given Vietnam was touchy.
He actually went to Vietnam.
He went to Vietnam. Yeah. He was in Vietnam.
And you didn't talk to him about that?
I did here and there. It was definitely touchy. He didn't like to go in depth about it. He'd answer my questions. If I asked him a question, he would answer it. Yeah. But he wouldn't go out of his way to talk about it, and I kind of took that in, so I wouldn't go out of my way to ask him, all these things. So I can't imagine, living through that. And that's why, people like you, I like to ask about that experience while you were in Vietnam.
Well, I didn't go to Vietnam, so.
No, right. Not in Vietnam, but just more so, even better yet, what was like homebound, through those times is something else.
It was an amazing time. It really was. And back in the late 60s, too, they had the Civil Rights Act, which was another thing that I didn't follow closely, because when I went into the basic training, I went to Fort Polk, Louisiana. In Fort Polk, Louisiana, it was a different world. They let us off for one weekend to go to a weekend pass. So we go into this impoverished little town, Leesville, Louisiana, and we went to go to the show. Well, we go to the show, and there's a white entrance and a black entrance. There's a white drinking fountain in front of the show and a black drinking fountain. Mm-hmm. Whites only, blacks only. From Santa Clara County, we had never seen anything like that.
So it wasn't like that in Santa Clara County, right?
Absolutely not.
Right.
No.
Because even at that time, it's still considered like a melting pot.
Yeah, in fact, there weren't that many. I'll say this. I went to Del Mar High School, and the president of the junior class was a black kid, and he was the only black kid in the junior class.
Really?
So that goes to show you where we came from and what we were seeing.
Right.
It was
the East definitely was behind. I mean, my dad works for Greenways to Palo Alto. He runs the garbage company there. And during Hurricane Katrina, he got called to go help out because, a lot of the drivers lost their homes and they weren't able to work.
Yeah.
So he came in and basically trained new people, right, to be garbage truck drivers and help the cleanup. He was there for a while.
Right.
And they were driving from one town to the next, and it was him and then two guys that he met out there. And it was a white guy and a black guy. And they just went to like a Quick Mart or whatever, to get some snacks, get some sodas, whatever. And they're waiting in line, and they get all the way to the front of the line, and the cashier lady, it's like, get in the back of the line, Yankee.
Oh
like,
my God.
just because he was with a black guy, they wouldn't serve him. And he's like, he was like, are you serious? We came all the way across the country to help you guys out,
Exactly.
during the hurricane, and this is how you're going to treat us.
Imagine technology has gone from, in the early 1900s, the planes were just starting to fly.
Yeah.
We went to the moon in 69. Guys went to the moon in 69, and they still had black drinking fountains, white drinking.
That guy that he was with, he basically told I forgot, whatever the contractor sent him over there, but he's like, you got to get me out of here. That was just what my dad experienced, one time with him.
Sure.
But he's like, he felt like he was going to get killed out over there,
Right.
spending a month away from his family, doing what he can to help him out, and he felt so uncomfortable that he's like, I feel like I'm like my life's at risk. Get me out, and then they ended up transferring him to, I don't know, somewhere else. To
Socially, our country is just not keeping up with technology. Socially, hopefully, things are changing.
Right.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
It's. I want to rewind a little bit because you talked about Del Mar High School. You went there. What year did you graduate Del Mar High?
63.
63. It's interesting that you said that. Given I know maybe some of the viewers don't, but I coached there.
Yes.
And last 2 seasons now I've coached there, and Del Mar actually in our district I think they got named the most diverse high school in the Campbell Union High School district.
Good to hear.
It's just interesting because it's a total flip 180 from what you said, that when you're graduating class,
really,
that president he said you was the only black male there.
Yes,
So
he was.
It's crazy to see. Again, it's a broken record, but it never stops.
We've came a long way, but we haven't gotten far enough quite yet.
No, we haven't gotten far enough. No,
it's
getting better slowly, but.
And by the way, don't drop my name there, because they probably won't.
They don't like
back.
it. Did you get in some trouble in high school?
I didn't get any trouble. I wasn't an especially good student, but I didn't get in any trouble.
No trouble.
No trouble.
So you only named out just because of bad grades?
No trouble. Yeah, well, I wasn't trying.
Gotcha.
I was capable. I just wasn't trying.
I could relate to
I
that.
probably couldn't say the same.
Yeah, a little other way around. I know.
Some trouble.
Yeah, Shane dragged me into some trouble too.
Oh,
I got him into a lot of trouble, but I also got him out of some trouble.
Well,
That's true. Yeah, good friend,
That's
huh?
good.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
So it's more or less. I mean, it's just incredible to hear the stuff that you've done and seen, and it's truly something else.
You know, speaking of Del Mar High School,
Sure.
I was a senior. I believe I was a senior when this happened. I don't know if you guys are familiar with. You probably aren't. Sherman Oaks Bowling Alley blew up when I was a senior, and I remember hearing the explosion. We lived quite a ways from the high school, and they were refinishing the lanes. It was a bowling alley,
Right.
refinishing the lanes, and I don't know whether it was a setup job or not, but the owner was building Futurama Bowl on the El Camino, I think it was, and Sherman Oaks blew up. They never did rebuild it. They found bowling pins miles away.
That's crazy.
Yes. Luckily, no one was killed. No one was there, and I guess the heater went on or whatever, and blew the place
Imagine
up.
walking your dog.
Oh,
The bowling
Minding your
alley
own
was-
business, you just get cleaned out by a
crazy.
bowling ball or
bowling
pin.
ball.
Bowling pin.
I talked to firefighters later. Now, this was when I was a senior in high school, about 62, and I talked to some of the guys that were first in on that fire because that area was a Santa Clara County area that our department protected. And I remember talking to a guy, Nate Darnelli, was driving one of the engines down Bascom Avenue because it was on Bascom Avenue.
Right.
He said he didn't get within a quarter mile of it because all of his tires were flat on the engine because of all the debris that was in
Oh wow.
Bascom Avenue.
That's crazy.
I've never heard of that.
I didn't know
Yeah,
that's-
that place
I'll have to
existed
look
yet
more
alone.
into that. Yeah.
What year was that?
Around 62, I was a senior in high school, so
Okay.
it was somewhere in 62, 63, somewhere.
That's
in there.
interesting. Yeah, I'd never heard that. I had never heard that in the slightest.
Look it
so-
up. It's-
I will. Yeah, we
I'll
can
have to
definitely
look
look
into
that
that.
up.
Yeah.
So you're talking about high school, and you know how you married your wife at 22. What was she a high school sweetheart? Did you meet her in high school, or
No.
where did you meet her? Tell me about that.
I met her. I don't know if she wants me to tell the story.
Our live audience is
It
cheering
was
you
okay.
on.
She's
They want to
back
hear it.
in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
live audience
Begging
is
you.
cheering.
Back when we met in '66, I think it was. I went to. It was a place called the Hawaiian Gardens was a really nice place that a lot of people used to go to. They changed it into a nightclub, and it was called Losers North and Losers South. Losers South was for teenagers
Okay.
dancing.
Underage.
Losers North, I was 21 at the time. Losers North was for of age men, and women only had to be 18. They couldn't drink, but they only had to be 18. So we went.
You would not
to,
see that today. I can
yeah.
tell you that much. I don't think you could see that today.
I went out with a buddy of mine, and he's still a good friend of mine. We went out, and she was there, and I asked her to dance, and that was that.
What was it? What was the icebreaker? What was the icebreaker on that one? You see a
icebreaker?
cute girl across the dance floor.
I
you know.
see her across the dance floor dancing with some other guy.
Okay.
So
So,
I waited.
competition right off the bat.
Competition. I waited, and I thought, well, this guy's going to have to, sit her down one of these days.
He's gonna have to pee or
So he
something.
finally did, and I went up. I asked her to dance, and that was that. I never let her sit down again. Of course, she wanted, hopefully, she wanted to keep dancing,
Yeah.
and we did. And then I took her. Actually, she took me home. I was in my buddy's Corvette, so I didn't have a car. She took me home, and I got in my car and followed her home to her house so that she wouldn't
Gotcha.
have to drive home by herself. And
I
that
see.
was
What a
that.
gentleman.
Oh, yeah.
Gentlemen,
Oh, sure.
love
Yeah.
that.
Anything you could do.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was it was quite a time.
Yeah, I would say so. So I want to actually, I'm glad my mom brought that up. I was gonna say, so I know I'm not much of a dancer myself, but
Absolutely not.
so yeah, I choose
No
not
shot.
to dance.
No
Even
singer.
sober as
Anything rhythm involved? Nope.
you ripping me apart here, bud. You're ripping me apart. Cut me some slack. But point is, I'm not a dancer. So I mean, did you have some go-to dance moves? I mean,
No,
no,
Were you doing
No?
the sprinkler?
just slow. It was,
Slow
it was all
dance,
slow
yeah.
dancing.
Yeah.
My mom asked for. She said, "Let's see the moves." That's what she is asking.
And
for.
you know who was playing that night?
who?
Sly and the Family Stone. Am I right? Sly
Yeah.
and the Family Stone. That was they happened to be there that night.
So that must be beyond my
They-
time because I haven't even
You
heard
don't
of
even
them.
know who
yeah.
they are.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just gonna.
Family Stone.
I could play like, oh yeah, I know other
That's
songs.
okay. That's look them
Yeah.
up.
I'll look them up. I will look them. I could do my homework. So I wanted to ask you too. I want to go back. I know we're talking about this lighthearted stuff, but I want to ask you more about firefighting and stuff like that and your experiences again. Is as far as living through things now. This is past a point you're older, and actually you would have grandkids by then. But I always like to ask, especially you being a firefighter, what was 9/11 like? Living through that, it's obviously you clearly weren't in New York, but were you a firefighter at that time still? You
I
were
was
already retired.
No,
But newly
9/11
retired, right?
9/11 was in 2001.
Okay.
I retired in '99.
Okay, gotcha.
So
So
I was
2
retired.
years.
But my brother was followed me 10 years later. He was a firefighter too in my department. He worked for Mountain View for 3 years and then came to our department. And he was still on during that time. And he said it was amazing because people would come and bring gifts to the firehouse. I mean, we had nothing to do with 9/11, obviously.
Right.
But people started realizing, wow, these buildings were on fire, and these 300 and something firefighters were rushing into the building
into the burning
Yeah.
to death.
to death.
Yeah.
They were rushing to their death,
Yeah.
and everybody was coming out. And anybody that's in the fire department knows you don't have the luxury to say, oh no,
Yeah, I'm
going in
good.
there.
That's not an
I'm
option.
not going in there. So it was. Those guys are truly heroes.
Right.
Truly heroes.
Say
And they
the
didn't
least.
find any. They found pulverized pieces of bone. I mean,
Yeah.
Right. So what I want to ask you is then, seeing that on the news when it broke, when it's first happening, and being a firefighter and knowing exactly what these as you said heroes are going through and what they're gonna face going in there. What was your initial thought? Obviously, like, oh, this is horrible, but
horrible. It was horrible. I was just like everybody else watching at the
Right.
time. In fact, 2001, I remember getting up and watching TV and seeing that one of the Twin Towers was burning and didn't know that the plane had gone into it. My wife had gotten up and gone to take care of the grandkids that
Right.
morning. It was, I forgot what day of the week it was, but so I was mesmerized by the TV, and it
Right.
was incredible. It
Right.
was incredible. And then
One-
the second plane hit.
Yeah.
Oh.
One thing that obviously, I mean, we were alive, but 2, 3,
We were
3 years
babies.
old, right? Don't have any real memory of it, but looking back, they have all the documentaries and whatnot. One thing that really stood out to me was like the days after, like how like connected our country was and like strong.
Came as a unit.
Really?
Yeah,
Sure.
and that's like one thing that's like, I mean, we just don't have that today. All the riots and everything like that. It's like it would be so good to just see us all come together. Like it almost brings like tears to my eyes, like how beautiful it was.
It
Like,
really-
Sure.
Everyone was
really
brothers
was.
and sisters the next,
Absolutely.
next following days.
Absolutely. People did realize at that time, well, it isn't about them. It's about us. It's about us, and it still is. Hopefully, we're going to realize it again. It's about all of us and
One
sticking
nation.
together, one nation, and so forth. One thing I didn't touch on, and I don't know how much time we have.
No, please, no, as much as you want.
The
Yeah, plenty of time.
yeah.
I was on during the earthquake, and I believe that was in '87.
Oh yeah, 87.
87.
Yeah, my dad lived in the Santa Cruz Mountains, so
Oh,
they got hit hard. Yeah.
Well, I wasn't on duty that day, but I was at a golf tournament in Hollister, and I remember sitting down. We were just going to eat, and it was around 5:00, and the World Series was just came on
Right.
TV,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden, the TV went blank, and somebody said, "Look out there," and you look out. If you've ever been to Ridgemark Golf Course, you can look out to the golf course, and you could see a wave coming toward the clubhouse.
That's
A
bonkers.
wave of
Yeah, I think my grandma was driving,
really.
and she
Yeah.
said like the road literally was like a wave coming.
Yeah,
at her.
Right.
a wave
I,
coming.
mean, I couldn't imagine
Amazing.
driving down the road and a concrete wave just.
So,
crazy.
naturally, that was
Oh,
it for the
89,
golf
yeah.
tournament. We all went home.
Uh-huh.
Everybody went home, and we all knew to go in to work. So when I got to the fire station, the engine was already gone, but we had another engine there that we were able to take out. You couldn't, when you walked in the fire, there was stuff in. This was in Los Gatos. You couldn't see any of the floor because everything was out of the lockers, out of the kitchen cabinets. Everything was on the floor. So we got in the engine, and they sent us to Redwood Estates, which is
That's where my dad lived, Redwood Estates. Yeah.
So we went up there, and there was a house on fire. Trouble is, there was no water. All the water mains were broken.
Yeah.
And the homeowner of the house was livid because we could not. We had a tank full of water. If we expended it on his house, we couldn't protect the perimeter.
Yeah.
Right.
And you didn't want the fire to go
to spread. Yeah.
to spread.
At some point.
They had to actually arrest him because he was.
Wow.
He poor guy, and I to this day feel sorry for him. In a related incident, a few days later, after the earthquake, we went. We had to go door to door up in the Santa Cruz Mountains because we didn't know, buildings had collapsed, and so we went door to door to make sure that there was no one trapped. We got to this one house, and there was they'd already red tagged it so that nobody could go in. The house was off its foundation. There was, we could see there was a car underneath the driveway had gone underneath the house, and it was a Corvette, and it was down there, and somebody came across and said, "Hey, do you guys smell smoke or smell gasoline down there?" And I said, "No, we don't. Do you guys smell anything?" No. Well, there was a dog house that was right up next to the house. There was a dog house, and it was there was a pit bull, female pit bull in the house. I could see the chain that was on the dog coming into the house. So, somebody mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
watch out. There's a dog here, so be careful. So we did. And we moved on to the next house and so forth. But somebody did come across and ask if we smelled gasoline. We didn't, so we moved on. Everything was fine at that house. Moved on. So an hour and a half later or so, we're a couple of streets down. A fire alarm comes in, and where do you suppose it was?
That house.
That
Not
house.
gas.
That house. So we jump in the engine, and we're first on the scene. We get there, and so we start pulling lines and so forth. And guess what? That doghouse wasn't next to the house anymore. It was
What?
way far away from the house next to the fence. And it was way too heavy for the dog to have dragged over there. So we filed that, and we fought the fire. And after the fire, the investigator came up, and I told him, I said, the doghouse was here when we were here an hour and a half ago, and it's not there anymore. What that tells us is somebody didn't want to burn the dog up, so they took the doghouse away from the house. And I remember having to testify at the trial
Yeah.
for the two
Insurance
brothers.
fraud,
For
yeah.
the two brothers, and believe me, I felt for them because the insurance would not cover the earthquake, but
Yeah.
it would have covered the fire.
That's-
Right.
So my grandpa was like the only house in that entire neighborhood that had earthquake insurance.
Really?
Yeah, he was like the only one,
Yeah.
at least on his block.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I don't know if my dad's still in here, but he probably knows exactly what you're talking about.
The audacity of someone to do that.
It was somewhere near Lexington Reservoir, and I can't
Okay.
remember the exact street
A little
name
farther
now.
down. But yeah, Redwood Estates. I mean, my
That's-
dad and his like lifelong
Chemaquita
friend.
Park, Redwood
Pat.
Estates, that whole area up
Uh-huh.
there. Yeah. In fact, when we consolidated with CDF back in 1970, we took in their guys that worked at Alma.
Yeah. I don't know if my dad's in here, what years he was a firefighter up there. But
That would be interesting. to
yeah, he
find
was
out.
definitely
Yeah.
up at the house during the earthquake because like his neighbors like across the street, there's a giant sink in between that, so that him and his friend Pat like built a bridge across
neat,
the
yeah.
hole for his neighbors to get out and stuff.
Wow.
And
I mean, beyond just it rings. or the connection, if you will, that
Yeah.
your dad, living over there and working. But the audacity of someone to do that, though, is incredible.
Well,
Take
it
advantage
was, but
of
I can, you can understand it. The two sons, they were probably in their 20s. They're trying to protect their parents. Their parents
Right.
didn't have insurance. They lost everything.
Yeah.
And so, I could understand it. Hopefully the judge took that into consideration. And
My dad said he was stationed at the Felton Station during the earthquake, and his engine got to escort President Bush when
Oh,
he
no
landed
kidding.
in Scotts Valley.
Oh, neat.
Huh.
Yeah, that is Felton's over in Santa Cruz County, though. Yeah.
Yeah, he was there, and he was in Corlitis, and then he could say he was on top of Empire Grade, the Lockheed Martin. He worked up there.
Oh, neat. Yeah. Wow.
It's just incredible to think that someone would take advantage of a natural disaster like that to do that. I get the reasoning, if you will, but it's just bizarre to think someone would.
We had a neighbor in our neighborhood that was like total, like scammer like that. Like she did something. She like flooded her backyard so she can get insurance. Like she got all new lawn, whatever, like, all new landscape, and then she burned down her kitchen on purpose to get a new remodeled kitchen, and actually her kitchen then caught on fire.
No kidding.
And like a grease fire.
Yeah.
And she actually passed away from like third-degree burns trying to protect her kitchen.
Well, that's the thing about doing it for whatever reason you do it for, and I'm not saying it's ever right, because it never is, because somebody could be killed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it could be a firefighter, it could be a neighbor trying to rush in and
in this case it was her, but it easily could have been
anybody. Sure.
with help.
Right.
Well, Frank, I cannot thank you enough for this opportunity of you joining us on episode 4 of this show. I've had a fantastic time hearing your stories and learning even more than I already knew about you in this time I've been a part of.
It's been my pleasure.
It was a good talk.
Absolutely.
My
So,
pleasure. Shane, thank you very much.
yeah. Thank you, Frank. I appreciate
I
it.
think maybe before we close out, we've been pestering with you with questions all day. If you had any questions for us you'd like us to answer before we wrap up.
Oh,
Put you on the
that's
spot.
new. I didn't know that was coming.
No, I know. It's been an hour of us asking you stuff, so if you had anything for us you'd like us to answer.
Oh, yeah. Let me ask you, if you had your druthers, what would you like to do in life? What floats your boat?
Well, so I race motorcycles.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like obviously like my biggest passion, and I have a good job, but I think if I could choose to get paid to do anything, it'd probably be like racing. I race in like the pro class, but I'm not as committed. Like I have other friends that are like the top dog pro guys, that they get paid, that's their living. I'm more at the bottom of the pack of the pros because I work full time, and I'm not able to put in the training and effort. But I think if like money wasn't an option, right, or it wasn't a problem, I'd probably full commit to that, racing professionally across the country and around the world and stuff.
We'll talk later because I know John Fox.
Oh, really?
Yes,
Nice.
he's our neighbor.
Oh, cool.
Oh, yeah. You know who that is?
Yeah, I know who John Fox
Okay.
is. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I could use a new sponsor.
There you go. Hey, that's gateway, right?
Awesome.
Get you in.
Now, how about you?
Truthfully, what we're doing right here, like Shane said, if money wasn't the problem, I love doing this. I would love to have all sorts of people on, big or small, no matter what they're doing. I love talking to people. I'm people's person to begin with. So if I could make a living off of, chatting with people and having a good time, having a drink or whatever it is, it's this would be the dream in a larger scale.
Yeah,
But-
right. Well, we got to start somewhere.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
you guys are doing a good job, and you made me feel comfortable. So
Good. Hey, well, awesome.
Yeah,
Well,
very
you are welcome back anytime. If you have
Thank
some more
you.
stories you want to
Thank
share,
you.
I'd love to have it. How about our live audience back here, huh? Yeah, live audience. Love to have it. Do you have any questions from the audience back there while we're here? No?
Thank you.
Awesome.
That means we talked about everything.
Awesome. Well, hey, everyone who's tuned into the show, thank you guys so much for the support. As always, I appreciate every single one of you guys. Let me know what you guys thought about the show down in the comments. This will be on YouTube. It will be on Apple Podcasts and Spotify Podcasts, hopefully by next week. But with that being said, I think we're all set to go.
Yeah,
What do
we'll
you say,
see
Shane?
you guys next Wednesday.
Oh, we almost forgot
Yeah.
the big news. We're doing
Special
every
guest.
Wednesday now.
Oh, yeah, true.
That was the big news. We're doing bi-weekly.
Yeah,
We're doing weekly now, Frank. That's a
weekly.
big step up.
Yeah.
It is.
We've
We're
gotten
going full in.
we've gotten a good little
I'm
traction on
excited.
it.
I am.
Yeah.
I'm excited about it too. So
Yeah.
so we just got to get on all the other platforms though, other than just Twitch here, and we'll see where it goes. So I'm excited. So make sure you guys catch that. All right. Hey, as always, be a friend, tell a friend, share it around. If you enjoyed the show, why don't you tell your mom, tell your dad, tell your aunt. If you hate the show, forget it ever happened, move on. All right. With that being said, thank you guys so much, and I'll see you guys next Wednesday.
Later.